Analyzing the organizational structure of any army, it is easy to find that in addition to civilian specialists, shoemakers, tailors, medics, quartermasters, and other auxiliary services, a significant and often predominant part of the rear services consists of combat units. This is due to the need to ensure the security and protection of rear areas from various threats, ranging from minor acts of sabotage to large-scale attacks. Their primary task is the continuous protection and defense of rear communications, warehouses, military bases, and other critical objects from enemy forces or sabotage groups. This is a complex and multifaceted task requiring constant vigilance and effective response to changing circumstances. The widespread opinion that the large-scale partisan movement in the occupied territories forced the Wehrmacht to transfer significant forces from the front is not entirely accurate. The Wehrmacht, like any other professional army, initially planned and created special structures to ensure the security of rear areas and protect them from sabotage and reconnaissance groups, the Soviet partisans. In the vast majority of cases, were such groups, differing only in significantly larger scale and a higher degree of organization. Moreover, the German command underestimated the ideological and political component of the partisan movement, which played a significant role in its development and spread. The German command did not foresee either such a number of partisan detachments, their incredible size, or their high degree of mobilization and organization. However, part of the blame for the scale of the partisan war lies with the Germans themselves, who left behind a significant number of surrounded but not destroyed units of the Red Army, which continued active hostilities, which in turn contributed to the rapid transformation of the nascent partisan movement into a mass movement covering vast territories. Moreover, the number of Soviet fighters like Zoya Kosmodemyanskaya, ready to sacrifice themselves for the sake of victory, far exceeded German expectations. It was a war of extermination, where death lurked not only from the enemy. Hunger, cold, and disease also posed a mortal danger, but they went to their deaths, guided by faith in victory and patriotic duty. There are many inaccuracies and misconceptions surrounding the Wehrmacht security units. Often, they are mistakenly identified with the SS troops, probably due to the common image of Punishers in black uniforms in movies and literature. This is an incorrect, simplified understanding of the situation. Although the SS troops did not actually engage in rear security, this function was performed by numerous collaborationist formations, many of whom were allowed to wear old black SS uniforms, which further complicated the situation. Thus, the visual similarity of some collaborationist units with the SS personnel gave a false impression of their belonging to the SS troops. Let's move on to a detailed analysis of the organizational structure of the Wehrmacht security units. Many have heard of the Wehrmacht security divisions and often include them in the total number of divisions stationed on the Eastern Front. This is partly true, as the Germans themselves included them in their reports. However, the rear security divisions were not intended for large-scale offensive or defensive operations. Their main task was to ensure the security of rear areas and the protection of communications. Therefore, their weapons, strength, and composition differed from the forward units, and the personnel, as a rule, consisted of less young and physically fit soldiers, often drafted from the reserve or had limited combat training. The composition of a rear security division, Sicherungsdivision, clearly demonstrates its limited capabilities in the event of major combat clashes. Let's consider it in more detail. A typical division usually included an infantry regiment of standard composition, however, often not fully staffed, which affected its combat effectiveness. An artillery division, usually equipped with 105mm howitzers, possibly field guns, to support the infantry and provide fire cover. A group of the secret field police, Geheime Feldpolizei, engaged in counterintelligence and maintaining order in the rear. A local rifle regiment, a more accurate analog of the Soviet name than security, often formed from local residents or prisoners of war, It usually consisted of 3 battalions of 4 rifle companies, equipped with light small arms. A guard battalion of 4 companies with light small arms, responsible for guarding important objects and communications. A police battalion, engaged in maintaining law and order and fighting crime in the rear. Divisional rear and support units, providing the division's vital support. It is important to note that most of the constituent parts of the division, with the exception of the infantry regiment and the artillery division, were not regular but attached, which reduced the degree of their integration and coordination of actions. Thus, a division made up only about a third of a normal infantry division. In fact, they were obtained by dividing an infantry division into 3 security divisions, which indicates their relatively weak combat power. However, security divisions were not the only means of ensuring the security of the rear. Previously, mention has already been made of the command for the security of the rear area of each field army, which included numerous commandants, prisoner of war camps, guard battalions, security battalions, military police battalions, and traffic control battalions. This multi-level management system was designed to ensure effective security and control of rear areas at various levels. An army group had its own rear security command, comparable in composition to an entire army corps, which emphasizes the scale of the task of rear security. Consider the example of Army Group Center and its Barak 102. At the beginning of the war against the USSR, not only divisions, but also many different auxiliary and special units were intended to protect the rear of this army group. This demonstrates the complex and multifaceted structure of the rear security system. Let's continue the analysis of the composition of Army Group Center and its rear security forces, designated as Barak 102. As already mentioned, at the beginning of Operation Barbarossa, the following forces were allocated to protect the rear area of Army Group Center. 3 rear security divisions, 221st, 286th, and 402nd. These divisions, although they had the status of divisions, were significantly inferior in combat power and numbers to regular infantry divisions of the Wehrmacht. Their composition, as described earlier, was specific and focused on security tasks, and not on conducting large-scale combat operations. It is important to note that even these 3 divisions did not provide complete coverage of the vast rear areas of Army Group Center. 2nd Rear Security Regiment included 2 motorcycle battalions and 1 motorcycle company, designed for rapid response to small sabotage groups and for patrolling. The presence of anti-tank companies indicates the need to protect against possible attacks using armored vehicles. This emphasizes that even relatively small partisan formations posed a threat to rear communications. 690th Police Battalion was part of the system for maintaining order and combating crime in the rear, but also participated in operations to counter partisans. Police battalions were often used to perform tasks beyond the scope of normal police work, including active participation in punitive operations. 502nd Guard Battalion specialized in guarding important objects such as headquarters, warehouses, communication nodes, and other critical objects. Their task was to prevent sabotage and subversion, as well as to ensure physical protection against the penetration of enemy agents. 194th Field Command was responsible for maintaining order and discipline in the occupied areas. It included a department of field gendarmerie, which was engaged in investigating crimes, detaining deserters, and maintaining discipline among German troops. In addition, the local commandants, 304th, 307th, 314th, 324th, 343rd, and 537th, which also had departments of field gendarmerie distributed in various areas of the rear of Army Group Center, were operationally subordinate to the 194th Command. Police Regiment Center was one of 3 similar regiments. There were also the South and North regiments that were directly subordinate to the Reichsfuhrer SS. Although they were not originally part of the SS troops, the regiment included 3 police battalions, 2 anti-tank platoons, and 2 armored car platoons, which made it a relatively powerful unit for fighting partisans. In 1943, it was renamed SS Polizia Regiment 13 and officially included in the SS troops. It is important to emphasize that the presented composition of Barak 102 at the beginning of the war was only the initial stage of the deployment of rear security forces. With the growth of partisan activity and the expansion of the scale of hostilities, the size and composition of the security forces were significantly strengthened. This happened through an increase in the number of German troops, the creation of new types of security formations, and the involvement of Allied and collaborationist troops. The increase in the number of German troops occurred in several ways. First, additional divisions and separate units were transferred to the command of rear areas, often removed from the front or transferred from the rear areas of Western Europe. Second, reserve and training divisions were transferred to rear areas, which simultaneously performed rear security tasks. Third, special security units were formed, such as transport and railway battalions and regiments, responsible for the protection of critical communications. The creation of new types of security formations also became an important aspect of strengthening rear security. For example, special armored trains, as well as escort teams for bridge columns, were created. The appearance of tank units in the security forces indicates the seriousness of the threat posed by partisans. The partisans, in turn, also began to receive anti-tank weapons, including 45mm guns and anti-tank rifles, which forced the Wehrmacht to strengthen tank units in the rear areas. The use of Allied and collaborationist troops became another important aspect of strengthening rear security. However, the Allies provided a limited number of troops, mainly for the protection of communications in the rear. The main burden of fighting the partisans was taken over by numerous collaborationist formations created from the local population. They made up the majority of the security forces in the occupied territories. Their number significantly exceeded the number of German troops involved in rear security. This is due to the fact that the Germans sought to minimize the costs of their troops and resources for rear security, preferring to use collaborators. However, the use of collaborators also led to significant problems, including unreliability, a high level of crime, and frequent cases of desertion. In conclusion, it can be said that the Wehrmacht's rear security system on the Eastern Front was a complex and multi-level structure, including both regular German units and numerous collaborationist formations. Despite significant efforts, the Wehrmacht never managed to completely suppress the partisan movement, which indicates the complexity and scale of this task. Comparing the number of partisan formations and Wehrmacht security forces remains a difficult task due to the lack of accurate data.